Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are going to give other folks who registered just another minute or so to join on, and then our program director, Professor Martha Gray, will kick us off. And I'm Melissa Perillo. You've probably seen emails from me or my name in your confirmation email at least. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Melissa, you just give me the high sign. Share at least. Start.
I think we should be respectful of everyone who joined on time and get started. Thank you.
I'm going to ask the requisite questions. Can everybody see my slides?
Yes.
Lola,
You are not in
Lola.
play mode yet.
But am I now?
Yes.
I think I am. All right. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming on what, at least in Boston, is a very, very hot summer evening. As Melissa said, I'm Martha Gray. I've been on the faculty at MIT for a long time and have been one of the lead faculty that have developed this Catalyst program that started about a decade ago. So I'm joined in this session by a few of our other faculty mentors and Dr. Andrew Sandell from the VA. And as I think you've seen, we partner with the VA, so you'll hear from her. And we have a number of fellows, and you have Melissa as staff, and there are other staff as well. So we have a lot of brain power here that can answer any questions you might have and try to demystify what this thing is. Our goal today is actually to tell you enough about who we are and how we work so that you can decide if this is something that you'd like to be a part of. I will provide a medium length overview because it's a relatively unusual type of program so that you can get a sense of what it is. And then some of the fellows will talk about their experience, where they're coming from and what Catalyst has done for them. Throughout, feel free to type any questions that come to mind in the chat. I know I can't read the chat while I'm talking, but we'll get to them. So just anything that comes to mind, get it in the chat so that you can make sure that you got the questions answered and anything that's unclear. And of course, at the end, we'll give you a chance to raise your hand and shout out any questions. I'm starting with a basic assumption, which is that you're here because you're interested in, or at least curious about, bringing innovations to advance health and human health. And I'll say this word innovation is something that's really become a hot topic for at least the last decade. And everybody's talking about it, but it's not always clear what that means and for whom. Most programs that claim to be supporting innovation, they don't start at the very beginning. They start when the applicants or the participants have to defend why whatever idea they came with is great. And then reviewers or venture capitalists or whoever determine whether in fact your idea is something that they're willing to support with their funds. I think one of the things that got us started in this, and one of the things we've learned over the years, is the secret to promoting innovation is actually not to give awards post hoc once somebody's already developed some form of an idea, but rather to start much, much earlier. And a big part of starting earlier is taking steps to grow your community to include people who are not like you. Because being part of bringing people together for the shared purpose, and the shared purpose is, in this case, advancing human health through innovation. When you bring people together and have a shared purpose and a shared experience, that is a truly different approach, and that is in fact what we do in Catalyst. So why is that approach important, at least in our minds? I think the upshot is that when you work together with people who are not like you, you're going to start to think differently. And you can read all kinds of books telling you thinking differently is critical to innovation. Question is, how do you do that? And this is my mental model for this, and that is that we operate from a mental framework that governs how we approach and react to situations and information. And my word for that is a mind map. And your mind map is informed by your domain knowledge, the stuff you've learned in school, and facts you've learned along the way. But it isn't just facts, it's shaped and it's grown by your experiences and by your values and the things you do with the domain knowledge you have. And that provides the context for your decision making. So for example, if you happen to be a clinician, or you can imagine being a clinician and you walk into a patient encounter, you don't just use the medical facts that you have on hand. You respond to that interaction based on your prior experiences, based on your prior experience with that particular patient, with the disease they may have, with the institution you work in. And that interaction is really guided by your mind map. And your mind map continues to change over time because of your experiences. And so again, the ability to think differently depends on building your mind map. And as you increase the spectrum, you're going to increase the likelihood of having a meaningful innovation. So another way to look at it is, the broader your mind map, the broader and the clearer your worldview is going to be. I think that part is sort of obvious and straightforward. The part that's really easy to forget, and is really the crux of why this is important, is that if you can't see anything that's outside your mind map, you don't even know you're missing it. So to give you an example of that instance, maybe it's because I've had teenagers, right? Have you ever heard a teenager tell you they know what it's like to be an adult, right? If you think back to when you were a teenager, if you interact with teenagers, of course, they cannot even imagine what you've done in the subsequent 10 years and what your life has been like. And until they've had the experiences that come in the years that follow. And that naivete is exactly the same when you hear people with no experience in medicine talk about how medical decisions should be made, or people with no experience in science talk about how discovery approaches, or people with no experience in the pharma industry talk about how easy it is to make and sell drugs, right? So these are things that you just make assumptions about, you don't know. So fundamentally, what we're doing in Catalyst is helping you avoid that naivete. So in Catalyst, we expand your mind map by working together with people that are not like you. Doesn't mean we don't use your mind map, but yours isn't the only one. And you have the shared purpose of designing and executing research projects that have the potential to advance human health. As you may hear from the fellows, but we regularly hear this from fellows who've been through the program, that it really changes how they think about problems and how they approach problems. Right, so that's a general overview. Let me just get a little bit more concrete about what we actually do. So operationally, Catalyst comprises two phases. The first phase, you enter as a cohort of fellows, and you work together to develop a portfolio of project proposals. And these are informed by the evidence that they're a real opportunity to address a clear medical or healthcare system need. In the second phase, you proceed as teams with a particular project, and you'll expand your teams beyond the fellows as needed, and you'll begin to execute, collecting evidence that your idea and your solution will actually do what you hope it will do, and bring it to the point where you can convince future funders. And after that, teams generally transition out of Catalyst and continue through a startup, through an independent academic project, or whatever makes sense. But in all cases, they're working to achieve that real world healthcare impact. Now, just to give you a sense in more detail how phase one works, since that's what you're going to be doing from between January and June, to spark the new project proposals, the first thing we consider is actually, what are the real needs? And with that in hand, the next question is, what are possible solution approaches to those needs? A need without a solution is really not an opportunity. But when you have a well-matched need-solution pair, then you have an opportunity to make a difference. Of course, your ability to actually deliver on that solution depends on having an execution plan to develop and test that solution idea. And that comprises the third element of phase one. So it's laid out sequentially here. The process is highly iterative. Fellows have described it as chaotic, but they are quick to say it's necessarily chaotic. But each of these elements requires some form of evidence from interviews, literature, and so on, so that your proposal becomes a logically connected, evidence-based plan that, if it all works out as you hope, can lead to impact. Okay, for many, the most unfamiliar and challenging part of this process relates to exploring and validating the need. It doesn't sound that hard. I mean, I think we all think we're working to address needs, but it is more like looking into a forest and trying to find your way. There are so many possibilities. Which one do you choose and what makes sense and why? So we don't just ask, what's the need? We ask, what is the bad outcome you're trying to prevent? And who has that bad outcome? It's usually a subgroup. And if you correct it, how will they be better off? And more to the equally important, how are you going to be able to tell that they are, in fact, better off? And these are very different questions than we tend to ask in traditional research. There we ask things like, what's the new knowledge you're going to generate? Can we publish it? Can we publish it in high impact journals? They're easy to write down, these questions, but they're hard to answer. And I don't think you can do it on your own. We do it by building community and working together to develop answers. We have a professionally diverse group of mentors that meet regularly with our diverse team of fellows, a group of fellows. And this photo is, in fact, from one of the early meetings. The mentors in this picture include a biotech CEO, a radiologist, a physicist, infectious disease doc, etc. And the Catalyst Innovation Fellows are similarly diverse groups. So though we call things faculty, they are not all professorial types. And through it, we begin to really reveal the common gaps in thinking. If anybody's talked to a biologist, they often say something like, well, I study cancer. And you say, okay, well, how? Well, I'm looking at how this factor affects a particular pathway. And then you say, well, why does that matter? Well, people die of cancer, but the connection between those two is obscure. And we're trying to help make clear that whatever you're doing, what's going to matter in the end. I don't want to pick just on biologists. I can pick on others, engineers. They love to make things better, more precise, more quantitative. That might be good, but you really have to be able to answer the question of how, if you make them more quantitative or more precise, how will that actually make a real difference? So being better is not necessarily a valuable change. And these are the kinds of things we press you on in phase one. And our experience has been, and people have responded, that this is not the kind of discussions they've had in their training or in their professional lives. Okay, so just to reassure you, despite it being chaotic, it does converge, and every year it has led to a strong project portfolio. The ones that make it through have a well-articulated need, which if solved would lead to an improvement that is valuable. There's a plausible solution that's matched to the need. I want to emphasize that a plausible solution could be very risky. It's not a guaranteed success, but it can't be a magic wand or something that violates the laws of physics. And then a viable action plan, something that you as fellows could do and could lead. So ideally, we want the proposals, and they generally do, involve multiple stakeholders. It's unusual, if not almost unheard of, that things are solved by one particular domain expertise. We're looking for legitimate academic research, by which we mean this is not, the kinds of projects that come out of this are not ones you can do in your garage in a month overnight. We're talking about things that really require some development time. Tough tech is a name that's emerging for this kind of thing. And of course, we want them to have some potential for funding we don't want a 50-year time horizon, but something that's at least a little bit more accessible. So in a nutshell, phase one is fundamentally a rigorous process of de-risking your proposal, the work you're planning to do, before you actually spend time doing it. So many of you might have seen a version of this slide about why most businesses fail. And it's because they build something and make something that nobody wants. It's not even that it's too expensive. Nobody even wants it. And though it's less studied in the academy, it's the same reason why so much research never goes beyond the publication. So the faculty mentoring team will help you learn to define projects that avoid that pitfall. And what you should be sure to know now is that these projects are not defined or constrained by the expertise or the funding from any one individual or lab program. And this is one of the things that makes it very different from the way typical research projects are defined. You have the freedom to consider specialties and technologies and to optimize for a good need solution pair. If you love a technology, we're still going to make sure that that's the right technology for whatever solution, whatever problem you're trying to solve. You will work in groups with diverse backgrounds, which again serves to magnify the scope of the mind map that you can work with. It is not one fellow, one project. Projects involve multiple fellows and generally involve ultimately drawing multiple collaborators and principal investigators. Projects may, and they almost always do, pivot several times because before becoming a proposal. This is a feature in our view. It's part of what helps you keep you from doing something that isn't going to matter, but it can be a little unsettling. So our focus is actually on developing project proposals that you can take the lead in executing. And this brings us to phase 2, but I do want to emphasize that this is a program really for fellows and by fellows. It's not us supervising your projects, we're mentoring. I should say, with regard to phase 2, there's no requirement that you continue beyond. That's a decision you can make based on your career objectives, your affinity to this way of thinking, whatever other factors come into play. We all have real lives and sometimes those change. But the real main point is this is an experience that's intended to be a mentored version of real life. This is not a class that simply ends in June with everybody just walking away. When you have that, it just, the output doesn't matter. This is, when you develop a proposal, it has to include your desire to actually do that work. And indeed, though we talk about projects a lot, we care about the projects, that's actually a vehicle. The most important outcome of this experience is to accelerate your career development. So phase 2 happens in a project specific way. We transition from meeting as a full cohort with a full group of faculty to having bi-weekly project meetings with a subset of faculty. And again, it's an iterative process. Teams usually need to expand initially in order to have the necessary human power to work and the expertise, and they recruit experts and students and so forth. And then the execution strategy continues to focus on de-risking. How do you mitigate or eliminate potential threats to its success? And in doing that, you develop a case for more substantial funding, either in the public or private sector. The timing for transitioning to independence is very project dependent, but it's really straightforward. It generally is very straightforward, and ditto when fellows transition. At the end of it all, our experience has been that most Catalyst projects exit with a path that's clearly focused on healthcare impact and evidence that supports that investment. The fellows themselves are transformed and with a deepened understanding of their personal strengths and a renewed perspective on their goals, leadership experience, and expanded career horizons. To illustrate what I'm talking about, I just want to share some outcomes so it's not just so high level. And here at the moment, I'm just sharing those things that came from projects that have either graduated from phase 2 or had at least 3 years in phase 2. We have a number of projects in phase 2 now that are comparatively early. So this particular group includes 16 projects that came from 4 cohorts for a total of 34 fellows. There were about 50 faculty over these cohorts that did the mentoring and about 180 people participating in the project. So you can see how it brings together, continues to grow your community. And I should note, and you can see this on the website, they're really very diverse with respect to the medical domain, the technology, and also the time to translation. So take a look at those on our website. 13 of those 16 projects received follow-on funding post Catalyst, which attests to their value. We were never focused at the beginning, and not now, on commercialization, though that is certainly one exit. that makes sense in some cases. But it turned out that this was happening very frequently. So of the 16, 8 have been either licensed to an existing company or formed the basis for a new funded startup. And that's a big number, just to put it in perspective. MIT, their traditional science program, that translation rate is about 15%. So this has certainly gotten MIT's attention. It's not actually that I don't think that people in Catalyst are somehow superior beings, but it's really that the process prevents people from spending a lot of time going in directions that are not actually going to help make a difference. I don't know how to test that hypothesis, but that seems to be the case. So overall, as many of you may know, MIT is a reference institution for translation. So the main point I'm making is that by looking at these projects and de-risking them from the point of nucleating the very beginning, it tends to increase the chances that they can get out and begin, at least be on the path to making a difference. I'd also say that almost all of the people involved have changed. They report anecdotally and in formal surveys and formal educational research, have changed what they do. And this includes people with a range of professional experiences, from those who have never been involved in research projects to seasoned researchers. All right, so let me just give you one example of a project. This is what we called NeuroQWERTY when they were in the program, and their idea is to provide motor function assessment for people with Parkinson's disease by capturing subtle timing information that's contained when they interact with a keyboard, whether it's a mobile device or a laptop, for example. Their initial use model was for clinical trials of new Parkinson's disease drugs, because it provides a semi-continuous sort of in the wild measurement. Without that, any subjects in those trials would have to go to a clinic with a movement disorder specialist and conduct a movement test. Future thoughts of this could include screening. I don't think they've gotten there. And right now this has been developed, is in the process of being developed by an investor through a startup company called linQ Medical. So of the fellows that were involved in this project, some went on to academic positions. One subsequently joined the startup of a different project, and one joined the startup linQ Medical. So the fellows can transition in careers that suit their needs. It doesn't have to be tied. The project doesn't die necessarily if it's been developed by this team. I should say this team was very multidisciplinary. It was international. It included fellows. It included seasoned investigators and trainees. Project really required significant, sophisticated technological advances to get to the point where they could be invested in, and also a deep appreciation for the clinical context in which it was going to be deployed. Having said that, if you look back to their phase 1 experience, you would never have guessed that the project that was going to emerge, you would never have guessed till the end that was the project that was going to emerge. They actually started out trying to prevent radiology errors, and they were going to look at eye movements. And then they went to air traffic controllers because that wasn't panning out, and then back to radiology errors, and they picked a different form of technology, et cetera, et cetera. Oops, and then eventually wound up with this NeuroQWERTY project. So I say that this is with the pivots that I was referring to that happen all the time. Whereas traditionally you might have just actually started to do an eye movement technology to deal with radiology errors. And in that particular case, probably not have made any difference. So it also reinforces the feeling of chaos. So having said that, let me just summarize with 2 frequently asked questions. What are the differences between a traditional research paradigm, which some of you are familiar with, versus Catalyst? In traditional research, you focus on production of new knowledge. That's what you get grants for. And here we really focus on the endpoint that we're looking for of changing healthcare outcomes. That isn't to say there is no knowledge generation, there is, but it's a byproduct of the process, not the goal in and of itself. There's a strong incentive in traditional work to go with what you know, to continue projects that already exist. And we are technology agnostic. The incentives is to solve problems by the best means available. Traditionally, it's PI centric. They're in charge. They drive the program and manage everything. We're fellow centric. Right? We support you. And by virtue of how this works, we tend to redeploy resources that maximize people's ability to contribute and leverage the entire ecosystem. The performance in traditional work tends to reinforce silos. You stick with, again, it's related to sticking with what you know, and this just sort of demands the multi-professional approach. And traditionally, we have a very hierarchical training system. It's probably what you've been through, and this is a 360 learning. We all learn from one another, including the faculty mentors. And the other question we get is, how does this compare to a startup incubator? Just to say so quickly, you know, that's usually when you go to an incubator, you already have a product or a service that you're planning to commercialize, rather than starting at the beginning. And you focus on the business model kind of activities, which are ultimately important, but certainly not the way you start a project. And the focus on those is to come up with a pitch to potential investors. So we use a lot of tools from the entrepreneurial world, but our goals are, they're really tuned to the idea of developing projects. All right, so let's move on to what Catalyst 2023 will look like. The program, as I mentioned at the beginning, is in partnership with the Veterans Administration. The host at MIT is IMES, and I think we missed one, Innovation Initiative. And the VA, it uses the Vha Innovation Ecosystem. What this means to you is that many of the resources of MIT can be leveraged by fellows in the program, even if you're not appointed by MIT. And I think that ditto goes for the VA. At the VA, fellows can also, like I was just saying, can also leverage irrespective of their primary appointment. And in a minute, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sandell, who could talk a little bit more about her perspective on the MIT VA collaboration. But before I do that, I just want to make sure I remember to say that you do not need to be from MIT or the VA in order to apply. We accept applicants who reside in the United States, not citizenship, but you have to reside in the US. If you reside in Europe, we do have a sister program called Catalyst Europe, and they should be soliciting in late fall or early 2023, so we can pass that information on to you if you happen to be calling in from Europe. So I'm going to turn it over to Indra. Can you talk about briefly the VA MIT collaboration?
Thank you, Martha. And I do have a lot of slides, but I will go very fast because I believe on the visual. Sometimes people see and then they get it very fast. Good evening, everyone. And as Martha mentioned, my name is Andrew Sandell, and I'm the National VA Coordinator for this fellowship program, and also a faculty from last 1 year. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about the collaboration of the Vha Innovation Ecosystem with the MIT Catalyst Fellowship. Next slide, please. So to give you a little bit of an idea what this Vha Innovation Ecosystem is, it falls under the Program Office of Dean, and I will not go in detail of that. Next slide, please.
Sorry.
And in the Vha Innovation Ecosystem, we have 3 programs, as you can see here, the Vha Innovators Network, where the 38 VA hospitals all across the country is a part of this network. And what does that mean? That means that all the frontline employees of these VA hospitals are involved in the innovation, and they will get a full support for the 1 year if they are in the application or if they are doing the project with the VA VHA Innovator Network, they convert basically you work on your idea to convert into a project. So this is for the empowering the frontline employees. The second category is the VHA Diffusion of Excellence. I'm very sure most of you who are from the VA hospital, they might have heard about the VHA Shark Tank competition that falls under the VHA Diffusion of Excellence. And the third program is the VHA National Centers for Innovation to Impact. But the VHA Innovation Ecosystem Fellowships falls under the category of the VHA Innovators Network. Next slide, please. So the MIT Catalyst Fellowship collaborated with the VHA Innovation Ecosystem a few years ago, but from 2021, they also opened this fellowship for the other VA hospital. Before that, it was only open for the Boston VA hospital. So in 2021 and 2022, it was open for Memphis and also for the Salt Lake City VA hospital. Next slide. And for Catalyst 2023, it is open for all the Innovator Network site. And as I mentioned earlier, that there are 38 VA hospitals all across the country, which is a part of this network. And also these sites already have established innovation hub, also have a very established culture of innovation. They do have a person like me. I'm also a director of innovation at Memphis VA Medical Center. So every site has one person like me who controls and who runs their innovation program. So they have very good infrastructure for the innovation. And also these innovator sites highly collaborate with the universities, academia, and also with the industry. Next slide. So this is from the 2022, the fellows who were selected from the VA. They are from the different VAs, and there were 6 fellows who were selected from the VA. Next slide. And we do have a faculty also from the VA who are from the different VA hospital as well as from the VHA program offices also. So one example which I want to give you, there are several other examples, like Martha said, that if you go on their website, you will get several projects. This is something which I thought that might be a very good example to show the real collaboration and then between the MIT Catalyst and the VHA Innovators Network. So this project, Jason is one of the fellow of this project. He is here, so you can chat with him or can ask several questions about this thing later in the session. But the thing which I want you to have a little bit of attention here, that this project was in the phase 1 in 2021, started by 4 fellows, and 3 fellows were from the 3 different VA hospitals. Like Martha mentioned, it's very collaborative and interdisciplinary. Salt Lake City, Memphis, Boston were the 3 VA for this project, and also a fellow from the University of Nebraska. The thing which I want you to a little bit pay attention here, that here they in the phase 1, when they were selected for this project, they also got the support from the VHA Innovator Network because they applied for the Spark application, and VHA Innovator Network gave them a support to work on their prototype. And in phase 2 this year.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. And in phase 2 this year, they created their prototype and they are going to test their prototype. And for that, again, they are going to apply for the seed application in the VHA Innovator Network, which can support them. So this, I thought, would be a very good example for the VA fellows to understand that how this all works. If you will get into the MIT Catalyst Fellowship, it's not that you are only with the MIT, but also it's a very huge collaboration between the VA and the VHA Innovator Network to support you in any way how you want it to be, with the networking, with the funding, and a lot of the investment. So that's, I think, so my 3 minutes are up, but we are open for question. I have here with me the program manager of our VHA Innovation Fellowship also, Madison. So if you have any question, please put it in the chat and we'll make sure to answer those questions. And if you want to come across any of the VA fellows, send email to Melissa or me, and then we'll be more than happy to connect you with any of the fellows. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Indra. Just one thing. if you happen to be from the VA and you don't know, or you're not from a network site, still apply. What we do want to make sure is everybody, whether you're from the VA or not, are in a situation where they can be supported in at least spiritually by their institution or their supervisor, right? So just that quick comment. All right, so logistics and workload. This is all on the website, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, except to just make sure that you're aware that there's scheduled meetings that happen weekly, and those are Wednesdays from 10 to 1 Eastern time. These are done remotely, and group discussions Mondays from 10 to 11. By scheduling it that way, it's a little bit easier than trying to get 12 or 13 people to find a time they can meet in an ad hoc way. Then there are three intensifications that are 3 days long. There are full days, so those are times where you won't be able to mix it with your day job like a conference would be. Where they're going to be is not to be determined, and they may require travel, and those dates are in the website. In terms of workload, you should count on 10 to 15 hours a week. Anything less than that, you're just not going to be able to make headway. Like anything, if you try to accomplish something, it does require some investment of time, and that those hours include the scheduled times, ad hoc office hours, or meeting with faculty or something like that, and also independent sort of unmentored work that you would do alone with other fellows. So that's roughly the time. And now, the other thing is, as program costs, we've been extremely fortunate that we have donors and partners that have enabled us to offer this without requiring tuition, like most programs do require. And the VA offers protected time to employees who are selected. In terms of travel costs, they'll be partially defrayed. Our objective will be to totally defray them, but it's going to depend on numbers and with the way energy prices are going and so forth. But those, so the good news and the maybe not quite as good news there. In terms of the process, the first round of consideration due August 1st. So I encourage you all, if you are some are partly interested, to please submit your application. We'll announce who is going to be interviewed towards the end of August. Again, all these dates are on the website. Interviews will be virtual, and the interviews will include one-on-one or one-on-team kinds of interviews, and also some experiential things so you get a sense of some of what the program is like. And then we hope to be able to announce who's accepted towards the end of September so that you can make plans and let us know that you're going to enroll by October. So again, all those dates are on the website. So the main message is to get your application in. So now for what's probably in some ways the most important part of this meeting is to hear reflections from current and past fellows. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn the podium, if you will, over to Alex, who just completed phase 1. So Alex, you are up.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. So like Martha mentioned, I'm Alex. I just finished up the 2022 phase 1. I am currently a senior manufacturing engineer for Stryker in our neurovascular division based in Salt Lake. And I am currently working on 2 projects that are entering that execution phase. One is transcutaneous auricular treatment, so essentially surface on the ear for chronic lower back pain. And the second is an ergonomics project related to endoscopy equipment. So now I'll go over to Tarsha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tarsha Ward. I am a research fellow at Harvard Medical School in the genetics department, where I work on cardiovascular disease. It's very different from what I work on in Catalyst. I'm in phase 2, and we work on a project on obstructive sleep apnea. Ravi Rasalingam also works with me, and he's at MIT Catalyst. He's at the VA, and so it's kind of a example of that VA MIT collaboration. But we work on and developed a prototype that we think is more comfortable for obstructive sleep apnea patients to wear. And we also work on another project known as the Barrier Project, where we are exploring better ways to prevent STIs and unplanned pregnancies. And so, yeah, so great to meet everyone. And I will pass it on to the next person.
Next person will be Lola.
Hi, nice to see everyone. My name is Lola Baird. I'm a social worker at the VA Boston Healthcare System, also a Catalyst Fellow from the 2020 cohort. I am currently in phase 2 on a project specific to VA Boston, but including fellows outside of the VA that looks at mental health access to care for veterans who are hoping to engage in care. My cohort during my cohort, we also looked at maternal health outcomes and trying to address some of the disparities that we're seeing. And that's certainly a project that I think has space for continued innovation.
Great, thank you. Next is Anita.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Anita Ronade. I'm a part of the spring 2021 cohort. I'm currently the chief of the business office at the VA Boston Healthcare System. And our group worked on a research study to isolate skin pigmentation and determine the relationship between skin pigmentation and pulse oximeter measurements. So we hypothesized that the differential optical absorption of melanin can explain reported differences in pulse oximeter measurement and the accuracy between darkly pigmented and lightly pigmented individuals. The first half of our phase 2 was spent critically evaluating the literature to determine all possible factors that could influence the function of a pulse oximeter. And our group did take a hiatus at phase 2 due to various ongoing commitments. However, there has been recently renewed interest, specifically in June of this year, an update from the FDA that they are continuing to look into this. So we look forward to picking back up. I just also want to add that I truly valued my experience as a Catalyst Fellow, specifically the collaboration and problem solving for unmet needs with my cohort. I know I dropped it in the chat, but as Martha mentioned, the process is necessarily chaotic in the best way possible. So I also continue to carry forward the tools I gained throughout this program in my current job as well. So, thank you.
Awesome, thanks for the detail. Next up is Aparna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aparna Arvapaka. I am a fellow in the 2022 cohort that just wrapped up phase 1. I am a gastroenterologist and the director of advanced endoscopy at VA Boston. And I worked with Alex, who's on this call, and a few other fellows on a project on ergonomics of endoscopy. So we're trying to come up with a solution that would mitigate left thumb injuries in physicians performing endoscopy. Like I said, we wrapped up our phase 1 work where we really dug deep into the need and tried to define the need and come up with the solution, concept. And very much looking forward to continue to work on this in phase 2.
All right, thank you. All right, Akshar.
Hi, everyone. I'm Akshar. I'm an ophthalmologist and a retina specialist with the Clinical Resource Hub of Vision 23. My work is primarily on doing retinal telemedicine in rural communities, especially to sort of add access for people who live very far from specialty care. So there's a real health equity lens to it. And internal to that, figuring out how to do some of those programs made me interested in innovation in the first place. And so then I was thrilled to be selected as a Catalyst Fellow, and I'm part of the Spring 2022 cohort moving towards phase 2. My primary focus of the project is outside of my discipline, which has been a real joy intellectually. I'm working on a digital therapeutic for nightmares and PTSD. And that has been great. I'm working with a brilliant machine learning and medical imaging basic scientist and an incredible psychiatrist in the VA as well. So our team, I am really proud to be a part of it. And it's been a fantastic experience. I think feeling your mind map change is the exact right metaphor for this. I think of things differently. I am deeply more a skeptic when looking at pitches and when reviewing evidence. Anytime somebody says, well, people say that, the hair on my neck stands up, because that's what Catalyst does. It really pushes you to support what you're saying, be critical of ideas, and evaluate your own assumptions. And I think in terms of outcomes, I think anybody who does a fellowship like this knows that they are interested in this potentially changing their career. But as a result of this fellowship, I am very interested in reorienting my career towards healthcare innovation. So that has been a big change for me, but it's a result of the fantastic experience that I've had in the fellowship. And if you're here, I absolutely encourage you to apply. It's been fantastic, and it will continue to be fantastic.
Great. And then
That Akshay said.
yeah, to wrap up the intros, we'll have Jason.
Hello, I'm Jason Ramirez. I am a staff anesthesiologist at the Salt Lake City Veteran Affairs Medical Center. I am a fellow from the Spring 2021 Catalyst cohort. Our project is the automatic inactivation of opioid medications. And it has gone through phase 1 of Catalyst, and we recently have completed or are coming towards the end of the first year of phase 2. And we've moved from proof of need to proof of concept to now we have 2 or 3 different prototypes in development. We're working with a VA engineering lab in Virginia. And this program's just been amazing for me. I've learned new problem solving strategies. I've learned a development process where you take ideas and get them moving towards completion. I say moving towards because we're not there yet. And one of the big things is my professional and personal network has grown tremendously. I'm working with other people both inside and outside the VA all across the country on this project. And, I've seen how engineers 3D print things and print circuit boards. It's just been phenomenal, and I highly recommend that you apply.
Great. Thank you for sharing your experience, Jason. I know a few of you touched on it, but for the fellows that have not shared their experience and have stuff to add, we'll have you give a little blurb, and then we'll open up questions for everyone joining today.
I had a great experience. My cohort was the COVID cohort. So kind of in the middle of the cohort is when COVID hit, and we went from meeting in person every week to quickly going virtual and kind of that complication. But I feel that we made a smooth transition to a virtual platform. And I still work regularly with folks who were in my cohort back in 2020.
Thanks, Lola. And Aparna, I had seen that you unmuted.
Yeah, so my story is that around the time that I came to know about Catalyst, I was trying to figure out like, what do I do with the next stage of my career? And I knew that I did not want to do, clinical research, as it is done like traditionally. And always been interested in like solving, problems whether it be related to my field or healthcare in general that I see on a daily basis. And I was like, I believe I was like savvy enough to say, well, this problem could be solved, if we took it to an intersection of like medicine and technology or medicine and engineering and so on, but never really had a framework or the experience to like, execute those ideas and change them into solutions. And I really I was exploring options as to like, how do I learn to do, this, like solve problems and go from idea to execution and solution. And came across the Vha Innovation Ecosystem and Innovation Network at that time. I applied for both the Spark Seeds Prep program and the Catalyst program. And really, like I definitely got what I was looking for and more through the Catalyst program. I definitely left with a framework as to like how to look at a problem, like which problems are worth solving, and try to like estimate the impact that they would have. And like Martha alluded to, like really like my mind map has expanded. And it also like it brought about like a change in like my mindset, so to speak. As a clinician, I'm like very solution oriented. If I'm doing something I want, I know what I want and I want to go through that, set path. And I wasn't really like embracing the chaos, like Anita mentioned. And but this program, it's very exciting to like open up to that particular mindset and explore the unknowns. So it's been very rewarding. And I also ended up with the project that's very close to my heart and my specialty. So I very strongly recommend if anyone's looking at it to like go ahead and apply.
Great, thank you, Aparna. And Tarsha, yep, you're ready.
I agree with everyone and what they have said, so I won't repeat that. But what I do want to say is that I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, and I wanted to know how I could merge my entrepreneurship with science. And so Catalyst did that for me. It definitely was beyond my expectations of how it helped my growth. I'm not the same person that I was when I walked into Catalyst. And so if you have an inkling of wanting to innovate, I would apply and go through the interviews and then decide what you would like to do. I do want to say that I've met a lot of people of different expertise and collaborators. I've learned team building. I've worked with the VA. There's just a lot of agency that this program gives you in order to grow, and they're very supportive. So I wanted to add that.
Awesome. I think we got quite a few of the experiences here. Next question, is there any advice that you would be wanting to give to the potential fellows applying in the next month?
All right, I'll break the ice.
Okay, go ahead, and I'll go.
All right, sounds good. So, advice-wise, I know we've said it a few times, but if you're on the fence, but you have that feeling or the inkling, apply. I encourage you to apply, go through the process. Advice in general, come into the experience with an open mind. The beauty of this program is you get to meet a diverse background of people and collaborate. Myself, I'm coming from an administrative operations background, and I collaborated with clinicians, researchers, engineers, et cetera, on various different projects. And the whole purpose, we keep harping on, the necessary chaotic process, but if you come into it with an open mind, no matter what your experience may be, you're going to be successful. Because you really, I believe Tarsha mentioned it, you grow throughout this program and this journey. So And Tarsha?
Okay, yeah, so I was gonna say that, be open. And also try to expand your thinking. Where I think the difference between this program and other programs that I've been involved with is that people come from different expertise. And so they're going to teach you something different than you may have not learned when you're just working with people like you. And so I would encourage you to be open and not be so rigid in your thinking.
All right, I'll open up to anybody on the call. If you have a question, you can either put it in the chat or unmute and ask it yourself.
I saw a question in the chat about getting support from supervisor and or director at the VA. I just wanted to, maybe Indra has or Madison have other advice, but I think if you're a VA applicant, it's very important to get supervisor buy-in into the process. Plan not just for the first 6 months, but to make sure that you have the bandwidth to continue to work on this like later as well. And I found the innovation specialists to be very good allies in the process. If there's any discussion that you want to have with your supervisor or the head of the service line, they should be able to help with carving out that 20% time.
And on the opposite end, I'm in the industry factor, so no protected time per se, but I did work with my manager. We're a very task-based company, so as long as you're able to complete what is needed, time allocated outside of work is very flexible. And we do take quite a few workday calls, and the class is also in the middle of a workday, so having that included in your schedule and allocated, it all works. If you communicate, you talk with legal, make sure that works. Yeah.
I would echo that. I would say, especially for the clinicians, think about whether you can commit not just to the letter of the program, but the spirit of the program. So I would not think of it in terms of the time that I need to spend is the meetings. That's really important, and you have to be at the meetings for your own development, obviously for participating. But there's going to be work that you're going to need to do outside of it, and some of that will be self-directed in a way that how much time you spend at the beginning may not be how much time you spend at the end, because you'll get better at the skill set. So you'll be less satisfied with the answers that you're putting forward. And you may say, well, they're going to ask me about this, or, I think this is a cohort study. I'm not sure this is appropriate. So you'll start pushing yourself to spend more time to be able to more firmly stand behind the things you're saying and to feel more comfortable with the through line you're drawing from your need to your solution and how you're going to implement it. So I would be thoughtful about how much time you have to commit. I wouldn't think of it just as like, these are just the minutes that I'm going to have to be there. And then my mind is totally going to turn off Catalyst when I'm not there. Because it's not, I think if you really embrace the program, you think about it a lot. So it's not really you're not just, on a clock. You really have to commit to the spirit of it too.
So there was also a question in the chat early on that I think Melissa said I should address from Laura, whether the investor in this case was the VA or other parties. I mean, the investors include the VA, but include MIT Central, as it were, and as well as people that have given philanthropic donations to the program, and various forms of partnerships where sometimes we will have people observe elements of it and learn from us, and they will provide resources in return for that. So it's a patchwork, and it's exactly a patchwork is how your projects tend to get funded early on through bits and pieces from various institutions. So Laura, you just need to let me know if that's addressing what you were asking or if there was something else.
That covers it. Thank you, Martha.
Good.
All right. If there are other questions that pop up, I'll intermediate with some other questions, but raise your hand on Zoom or physically, we can maybe catch it, but that'll help indicate, hey, I'm ready to ask a question. But my favorite one is, what was your favorite part of the program for the fellows? I can go first. Well, I see all the thinking faces. So I 22 was almost largely virtual. So my favorite part was finally being able to meet in person, which happened towards the end of the program. So we did have some unexpected delays with the variant increases and such, and safety took priority, but to work with a bunch of people for multiple months and to get to finally see them in person and sort of like recognize how far we've come, that was a really like phenomenal moment in the program.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, just the best part of the experience was meeting the people through your cohort and also the faculty. It was, the best experience possible to have a dedicated amount of people willing and able to support you, provide guidance, help you along the way. And I think being a part of this Catalyst community is extremely powerful as well. No matter what stage you are in your career. And then similarly, we were the second cohort, a part of COVID, so after Lola's. And for our Boston cohort, we finally met face-to-face for a dinner that took place like after our phase one ended. But we met, and that was like quite celebratory just to be able to meet and see each other face-to-face outside of a screen. So likewise, Alex.
I would say that one of my favorite parts, echoing all of those other things as well, but one of my favorite parts was, when you start evolving your concept, you have these sort of milestones. That's a separate thing, but you sort of have these milestone presentations that you need to give, and there are an incredible, in addition to the faculty's great expertise, there's incredible community of independent experts that supports the program. And so you'll be working on something, really kind of trying to figure something out. And then you'll get, a 20-30 minute call with a group of people, all with deep, decades-long experience and having solved some of the same problems, maybe in different applications. And they'll be able to tell you, they're like, oh yeah, they tried that in 95 and it didn't work because you can't, they'll give you an explanation and it'll crystallize, and it'll save you like another 3 months of work, just because somebody who's done it and has really deep expertise in the area helps you navigate they don't tell you the answer, but they help you navigate the intellectual challenge of figuring it out. And that to me was really special. I really loved that time.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point. 6 months goes by really, really fast. So the more people you talk to that are experts in the field help you direct your project appropriately. Any of the other, Tarsha, yes.
I agree. Working with the people was my favorite part. As everyone was talking, I had flashbacks to all of our Slack conversations and how excited we were about the different ideas, whether it was 11 o'clock at night or 7 in the morning. So you feed off of the excitement of everyone because these are innovators. So I thought that was an exciting time. And also entering phase 2, so building the team, working with the students and the engineers and the collaborators, that at that time you have these fundamental tools that you've learned. And so you are learning from everyone, but also you're helping to teach the students that are coming in and bring your project together. So I think that was also one of my favorite parts.
One of my favorite parts has been leveraging the resources from both MIT and the VA to help move our project forward. So our project started through MIT Catalyst, and even though I work at the VA, it wasn't specifically involved. We weren't rather specifically involved with the INET program. But after phase 1, we applied for initial grant funding through the VA INET program. And it's just been phenomenal. So to give an example, our prototype lab is a VA lab, and the contact and the funding came from the INET program. But in addition, right now through MIT, we're part of the DIVE program, which is an internship for students. And we have 3 students working on a market analysis for our project. And they're going to give us a report, a final report in 2 weeks. So just the leverage you can gain through both of these organizations is epic.
Thanks, Jason. Aparna, you had unmuted as well.
Yeah, so I agree with everyone. One of my favorite parts was just the Catalyst cohort and interacting with, brilliant, nice people every day. The other thing I really enjoyed was just going back to, almost being doing stuff outside of like what I do every day, which is gastroenterology, and going out of that realm. And it was just very liberating and refreshing to like do essentially like whatever you want. And there was we went through a strengths assessment, and I realized that I was an ideator and a learner, and truly that's the part that I enjoyed, which is, like literally the sky's the limit, anything's possible, like work on whatever problem you want and use whatever technology you want. So that was something that I really enjoyed.
Great.
Ditto.
Lola, yeah. Go ahead.
Just ditto what everyone has said so far. I'm very much a relationship person, so building those relationships and the ongoing relationships has been very important to me, and one of my favorite parts. Also, MIT was always, or has always, kind of been like an entity outside of my normal scope where I exist normally, and so having access to the MIT network and just kind of being involved with incredibly intelligent people was an amazing experience. It wasn't, everyone's incredibly intelligent, but also super approachable and really seemed interested in what I had to say, and that wasn't. That was a very nice experience.
Thanks for sharing. My last question that I wrote down that came off the top of my head prior to this meeting was giving like a little bit of advice or background onto how you handled the logistics and the time load, given the 10 to 15 hours, just so people get a better picture of like what that means on a week to week or even a day by day basis.
I think really be proactive, know what your week looks like, share that information with your team. Especially, I think that there's a great organic process to finding your team. And some people work on multiple teams, even towards the end. But I think that while that's still in flux, it's hard to sort of nail these sort of dynamics down as easily as possible. I think it's all really great that the teams are self-selected. So you kind of work with people and get a sense for how everyone thinks and how they approach the experience, and then you kind of find areas of alignment, and it really organically turns into your team. And it's hard to do that early, but as you proceed, and especially as the intensity picks up, as you sort of need to start producing a little bit more, and it's less free form and kind of open as it is in the beginning. I think it's really good to be proactive, to reach out to your team and say, I have this case on Friday, so I can't meet on Friday. Do you have any time on Wednesday? So I think that you really have to manage the time. it's wonderful, and it's every minute is absolutely worth it, but it's a significant amount of time. And like I said, as you internalize the program a little bit more, you become less satisfied with, something that you would have been so proud of yourself for doing in the beginning as a measure of your own progress. So you can push yourself to spend more time on it. I say this specifically because I'm most familiar with the schedules of clinicians. It's something that you really need to be thoughtful about. And if you are covering or you're on call, like, let people know at the beginning of the week, just because you don't want to have something where there's not enough ownership about the schedule until the end of the week, and then you say, what do we do? So that doesn't end up really happening, but just be proactive about making that not happen.
Definitely. Aparna?
Yeah, so I agree. It's about like however much you give to the program, put in however much time you invest into the program, you get that much back. So when I started or before I started the Catalyst program, I tried to like clear my schedule, work-wise. I mean, I knew I had to like balance my job and Catalyst and my kids. So I tried to like get rid of, a lot of other things that I do, academics, conferences, like some of the committee work that I do. I took a hiatus from that kind of stuff just so that I could spend as much time as I could within the program to get the most out of it. And I think I don't regret, putting a pause on other things at all. It was good that I was able to dedicate that time. And I agree with Akshar, if you're a clinician and you have like call responsibilities and stuff, it's best to like not have them, not have a conflict with those at least on the days that you have the sessions, so they can, focus as much as possible on at least the scheduled activities.
Thanks, Aparna. Anyone else?
I agree with what everyone has said. I think for me, I took a work hard, play hard approach. And so Catalyst was play to me because it was innovative and fun, even though it was really hard. Your team members' schedules definitely matter. And so I agree, it's more organic who you work with, because those are the people that you brainstorm and do your presentations with. And also I had to be flexible. So if I had a lunchtime between 12 and 1, maybe that's when I can talk to someone. And I remember being at a birthday party and we had a meeting at 8 o'clock at night with this dentist. And I remember going in the corner and talking to him, but guess what? That was the person who developed our prototype. So, so being flexible and just having that go at it attitude, I think, yeah, and just don't think too hard about it and just do it.
I actually really like that there's an additional hour carved out, I think, for on Wednesdays or a different day of the week, that I think will really help with time management. For me, with someone who has young kids, the evening meetings really were a struggle for me. And although I made it work, definitely, I could see having this additional hour built into the week should be helpful to alleviate some of the evening stress for folks who may be in similar situations.
Definitely. I think there's a balance of having a structure and knowing when certain meetings can occur, but also if you're on a team of 3 to 5 people, schedules change, workload changes, things pop up, and you need to definitely put on the empathy hat and be able to manage and be flexible in that regard. Well, that about covers the questions. I believe I'm going to take it back to Melissa and Martha to wrap up here. So unless you have a dying question in the audience, we thank you for your time.
Thanks, fellows. Really appreciate that you volunteered to come share your experience with everyone. And Melissa, any last words? You can, as I think has been written in the chat multiple times, feel free to reach out to us individually. Some people are more comfortable with that approach.
Yes, please feel free to reach out. I put my email address in the chat. It's perillo@mit.edu. The application deadline is August 1st, so please get your applications in. I do encourage you to complete the expression of interest as soon as possible. Then we can match you with fellows who have a similar or aligned background, and they can answer any remaining questions that you have. And that will also give you the link to the application. So that's sort of the starter, and we can apply many of the responses from your expression of interest to your applications. There's not too much redundancy there. Those are the key dates. And also, if you do apply, hold September 9th. That's our interview day. We will send invitations to all who are invited. But it's good to know that it's a 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. obligation. So anyone have any questions? Okay, apply. Have great experiences like you've heard about today. Work with amazing people like these fellows and alumni.
And Melissa.
Definitely. Right.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, fellows. Thank you, Melissa. Thanks, Indra.
Thank you, everyone.